Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the east part of the March Madness bracket that we're breaking down. Cade Kennedy here, along with Tyler Riggs. Folks, if you could like, subscribe, and comment down below, we would sincerely appreciate it. It's always a fun time here when we get to do March Madness bracket breakdowns. We already talked a little bit about one of the regions, the South region, as we make our way across the field of 68, technically, with the first four games, but sometimes those matter, sometimes they don't. We'll talk about one of them here, getting right into it. Purdue taking on either Texas Southern or Fairleigh Dickinson. Will it matter? I don't think so, unless you're calling the upset of the year, Tyler. I don't think it's going to be.
It won't matter, but I think the meme continues for at least another game. I do have Texas Southern playing Purdue. So they only, remember, folks, Texas Southern to go 5-0 this season just needs to win the NCAA tournament. That's all.
Yeah.
They enter the tournament at 15-20.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there's no answer for Zach Edey in this game. Edey putting up the 22-12, almost 13 boards and 2 blocks. Texas Southern does not have a guy that is going to even come close to matching up with Zach Edey.
And that brings us to quite possibly one of the best 8-9 games.
I'm so glad, because we didn't discuss this before, and I had the same thought. I wrote my notes. This is a fantastic 8-9 game right here.
It will not load the stats that I want to load on this because this computer occasionally hates me, Tyler. So
Okay.
we're gonna have to do it the old school way of I read it off my computer or your notes or the phone or whatever we need to do here. But either way, you look at both Memphis and Florida Atlantic. Memphis, they're feeling good right now. They won the American Championship. Yes, it was over an injured Houston, but that doesn't matter. That's still a win nonetheless. And Florida Atlantic, they've been one of the stories of the year, ranked. This is an Owls team that can seemingly do it all at times, offense, defense. Memphis, it's that battle of the good team versus the hot hand. Not to say Memphis is a bad team, obviously. You're going to be a good team to make the tournament, but that kind of matchup that we always look forward to when it comes to tournament time.
Yeah, this one, I mean, both of these teams, I think, get a rough draw, right? Because I think you put these teams in a 7-10 seed situation, split them out a little bit. I think they both have a good chance to win their first round matchup, but the fact that they got to play each other is just good ratings, I think, for the tournament. So a couple things to watch. Memphis, as you mentioned, of course, riding that momentum, did get the big win over Houston with the caveat, the asterisk next to it. That being said, though, folks, they have got a huge 1-2 punch. You talk about the guard Kendrick Davis, puts up 22 points a game, just under 4 boards, 5 assists, and 2 steals. I mean, that is a stat line right there for a guard, mind you. And then forward DeAndre Williams, a solid 17 points a game, plus 8 rebounds. Those two do a lot of the heavy lifting for the Tigers. On the other side, though, FAU, Florida Atlantic, Cade, at the end of last year, had started to kind of show some signs of life, right? Then you get to the portal, you pick up some of those seniors, and all of a sudden they're a deep team. They don't have anybody that explodes off the page at you in terms of raw stats, but they'll go a good 10 deep, and all those guys will contribute. So that's how they've been able to win games. When you talk about a team that hustles after it, I mean, they are not a big team. They've only got 2 starters over 6'4", but yet they're one of the better rebounding teams in their conference and in the nation for their size. And they just get after it physically, mentally. They're tough. And I don't know if that's a team that a lot of people want to run into in the first round.
And I'm glad you mentioned the rebounding part there for FAU because that's something Memphis struggles with at times is even though they'll have the size advantage here, sometimes getting boards is tough for Memphis. And, I mean, you'll see that every once in a while. This is going to be a tremendous matchup. And, I mean, this is one of those real coin flip battles. I feel like we're going to end up saying that for every 8-9 game here because they're all
they're all pretty good this
year. They're all pretty good. There's no one that looks like it stands out over the other. But at the end of the –
might be one or two.
Maybe. We'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get there. But looking at it, at least in my perspective, I feel like I have to go with FAU.
Yes. Let's go in unison.
There we go.
Florida Atlantic. They get the dub. They kind of just take the wind out of the sails of Memphis. Heartbreak for the Tigers.
Yeah, it'll be a rough showing, I think, for Memphis late in the game as FAU starts to slowly pull away.
Yeah.
And for a team that comes in riding the high to immediately get punched down, And so that's never a fun feeling, getting that fun run there and having to immediately go back on home. Speaking of fun matchups, Tyler, we talked about in the 5-12 with College of Charleston taking on San Diego State, Duke and Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts, of course, had the 2020 run to the Sweet 16. Still not the best run in school history. Made the Elite Eight in 1974. And Duke is a team that, well, needs no introduction. You know who Duke is. Yes, of course, Coach K is not there. It's Coach Schreier now. But this is a Duke team that they found their stride. They just won the ACC tournament. They're a 5 seed. At times, people were contemplating how good is Duke really this year. There was the time where them and North Carolina were both unranked. Of course, Duke fans are going to be happy about that. North Carolina not even making the NIT because they imposed that on themselves, which that's a video for another time. But my goodness, I mean, we know about Max Asmus, but Tyler, I know you're a fan of the next kid you want to talk about. When you have a 7'5" center on your team, that's just incredible.
Yeah, and this kid's a senior. Connor Vanover has been at a couple different places, was at Arkansas for a couple years, bounced around, found a home in Oral Roberts. And I remember, folks, from their run to the Sweet 16 a couple years ago, it was really just Max Asmith putting up 26 a game. He shooting 42% from three. He was going off, and then he had O'Banner that was right there with him. Well, that gentleman transferred after that run, went to Texas Tech. Has had a good career, but hasn't reached the heights with Tech that maybe probably, he thought, so to speak. But because of that, ORU built some depth around Max Asmith. He's not averaging 26 this year. He's averaging 22, still pretty solid. But the Connor Vanover kid only plays about 25 minutes a game, puts up a solid 12 and 6, and he's the second lead shot blocker in the country, 3.5 blocks per game. With that 7'5" frame, he knows how to use it. He kind of reminds me of what Zach Edey was last year, a guy that, maybe you couldn't trust to play the full complement of minutes, but he was in there. He's going to be productive. And, it'd be interesting to see if Duke is able to handle that because this is a young Duke team, right? They are one of the few that I think of the powers that don't have just that go-to super senior, so to speak, like a lot of these teams still do because of the COVID years and things of that nature. And I think at the end of the day, that's what bites Duke, Cade. I'm saying it. ORU, baby, to the round of 32.
You're saying it. You're calling it. There we go.
It.
You're calling Oral Roberts. Here's the thing with you, Tyler. If this was any other 5-12, if Oral Roberts is in any other position, I am full 100% agreement with you.
But here's the thing, Cade. This Oral Roberts team is 10 times better than that team that went to the Sweet 16 2 years ago.
That is true, and I agree.
They murdered their way through the summit. They didn't just get there on a little bit of a hot run like they did a couple years ago. This has been a team that from the jump says, we're set out to dominate the Summit League. They won 30 games this year.
I agree.
They're deep. I think it's going to sneak up on Duke.
And that's the thing that makes this one so tough for me because if this is any other situation, you put Oral Roberts against St. Mary's, you put him against Miami, you put him against San Diego State.
What you're saying.
I think not wipe the floor with them, but I think they beat them more handily than you usually would see a 12 upset of 5.
It is definitely the worst draw, I think, for ORU. I would contend they shouldn't have been a 12 seed in the first place. I thought they deserved more respect than that, probably about a 10 seed, maybe to 11. They didn't get that, and they did draw probably the toughest 5 seed of the bunch. That they had to match up with.
And this is the thing that I look at here because I have gone back and forth on this matchup. As a college basketball fan, I feel like I have to root for Oral Roberts to win this game. I think
they're the best team in Oklahoma this year.
Especially being in Oklahoma, you feel you have to. But at the same time, I feel like lightning doesn't strike twice. I think Duke finds a way to get the win. This reminds me of what will be like the Duke UCF game, the Taco Fall year, where they don't really have an answer for anything, but Duke's able to go toe-to-toe with them scoring-wise. Maybe Duke slows the game down a bit, starts to ground it out. Filipowski's playing well right now. I think Duke kind of slowly backs away, turns this more into a mid-range and three-point game, which can be a problem for the Blue Devils. I'm not going to deny if they try to get into a three-point shootout, that can absolutely be problems. But I think Duke is able to ride the defense, start to go a bit more to that mid-range game and kind of that higher post action, I think Duke finds a way to win one that might be controversial to some people. I could really see this. This just feels like it'll be like that Duke UCF game.
And I can understand where you're getting that from completely. The problem is Coach K is not on that bench anymore.
That's true.
All those things that you just mentioned come from a result of Coach K's
Yes.
knowledge. He's not on that bench anymore. I think there's some trial by fire going on with Coach Schreier. He's doing a great job, but I think you'll see the coaching side of it kind of rear itself a little bit in this game. Maybe Duke responds just off sheer tradition, right?
Yeah.
You know, they've got guys that have at least been through the ringer somewhat, maybe not quite to the level and experience of some of the other powers, but still, I don't know. I just have a feeling that ORU is going to remind people, hey, yeah, Max Asmith's still out here chucking away, and they're deeper, they're better. I think ORU wants to make a statement.
And so this is one of those, I want ORU to win. I'm rooting for them. But at the same time, I don't think it'll happen. But hey, you never know. It's March. That's all you can say.
Dreams can be memes, and memes can be dreams.
That's true. And that brings us to our next game. Tennessee taking on Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns and the Volunteers. Tennessee going through a bit of injury trouble right now, but the Vols are still a fun team to watch. And, I mean, it's just one of those where every single year for Coach Barnes, it's just trying to get to that Sweet 16 has been a challenge at times for him. Getting to that second weekend. If you're Tennessee, I mean, I don't want to say, you know, this is a dire situation or anything, especially with your injury situation, but you look at the teams around you, Louisiana, Oral Roberts, and Duke, I feel like you should, on paper, have a good reason to get there.
Yeah, and I think in this one we'll see Tennessee get tested. You mentioned partly because of the injury stuff, and personally, at points in the season, Tennessee really struggled offensively to find efficient shots. There's multiple games where they shot under 30% from the field. Now, what's crazy is their defense is good enough to where they were able to actually win a couple of those games, which is an oddity of itself. And I think even if they struggle from the field in this one, the defense is going to be something that Louisiana has not seen. They just have not played a tough enough schedule to see that type of defense. And I think that kind of is some Tennessee will hang their hat on, at least for this first round. I mean, it's going to take an epic, horrible shooting day for Louisiana, I think, to have a chance. I think Tennessee suffocates them in the end and pulls it out. But there will be kind of some exposed things there that I think teams might be able to take advantage of going forward.
And that's where I'm with that. I think Tennessee gets the win here, but it sets up a foreboding matchup with either Duke or Oral Roberts, whoever they get. And so that sets up what should be a just fun time. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. This is always one of the best times of the year. I know we already talked about it a little bit looking at the South bracket, but this brings up Kentucky and Providence, the 6-11 game. Kentucky's a weird team, to say the least, this year. They have times where they look like any other Kentucky team. They have times where it just looks like five guys on a court. The Providence team that no one's really talking about. The Friars are just here.
Yeah, and I think that's because for both these teams, they've underperformed, right? Providence had that huge year last year, had the disappointment in the tournament, came up short there, and haven't been the same since. Kentucky still got Oscar Tshiebwe, who's the defending National Player of the Year, but like you said, there's chemistry issues, it seems like, half the time. And while Tshiebwe's still producing, he's not producing at the level he was last year, and then there's just not enough help, I think, around him. In a vacuum, though, for this matchup, I think Tshiebwe's the big difference for Kentucky. I don't think Providence has an answer for him. He'll power him through. Everybody go, oh, hey, there's Tshiebwe. There he is. I don't know if it'll last much more after that, going into the round of the 32 and beyond, but I think just in the vacuum here, Kentucky will have enough to get past the Friars.
And that's where I'm at. I think Kentucky, they might stumble around in this one at times, but once they get the power of Oscar Tshiebwe at times, that's all you need to carry you through some of these games. It'll be a physical, rough game for sure, but I think Kentucky's able to tough it out. And that brings up the next one, K-State taking on Montana State. The Bobcats just continuing to keep on winning in the Big Sky, record of 25-9, taking on a Kansas State team that got bounced a bit earlier than they expected probably in the Big 12 tournament, but that happens from time to time in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough tournament conference-wise to go through, and I think, I heard on ESPN Radio, I think it was last week, them talking about this, Late night, Freddie Coleman, great listen if you're out driving around, Sirius XM type deal. But sometimes with these conference tournaments, especially the big conference tournaments, your Big 12s, your Big East, ACC, Pac-12, and SEC, getting bounced early may be a little bit of a blessing, simply because A, it allows you a little time to rest, and B, it allows you to say, okay, hey, we need to refocus on some things. I think this is one of those cases for Kansas State. I think they're going to blow the doors off Montana State, first with their defense, and then Keontae Johnson just being, everything that he is as a leader out there, does a lot for Kansas State. I think it'll be a stable win for the Wildcats in the first round over the Bobcats.
Yeah, I agree. I think K-State's able to roll in this one and just keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
It's really all you need there. And that brings up the 7-10.
What an ugly matchup.
What a fun match. It's the Spartans and the Trojans, Tyler. It's the two armies going at it. You've got Michigan State and USC. You've got two teams that, man, they are, at times, look really good. At other times, don't know why they're here.
Yeah.
That's the best I could say in Michigan State. They're a fun three-point shooting team when they're hot, but when they're cold, it is a brutal watch, to say the least. And, I mean, we've seen that in the Big Ten tournament this year. Michigan State struggled heavily against Ohio State, who's trying to get their own coach fired. I saw Ohio State fans actively cheering for Michigan State to win so Coach Holtman would be fired, and it just wouldn't happen.
Our good buddy Trent Caldwell, who's now back east, big Ohio State fan, I'm pretty sure if I would have asked him, they've tried to fire him about 3 or 4 times now, even when they were good. So he's not a fan favorite for the Ohio State crowd. But on this matchup, Cade, I mean, I say ugly just because, like you alluded to, these two teams at times don't know who they are. Right? They just, there's so much tradition and history behind these two programs. And at times, if I slapped, I don't know, Chattanooga or something over that, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, this looks like Chattanooga. I mean, they're just, it's incredible the Jekyll and Hyde that they go through. I think in the end, even though very much this is easily the most coin flip 7-10 in my opinion, I think Michigan State takes it solely on the experience of Tom Izzo in the postseason. Do they last much beyond that? Not sure, but I think at least for the first round, again, in a vacuum, they just get enough to get past USC.
And that's where I'm at. I think you go with the coach that has the most experience in this type of matchup. I think Michigan State gets the job done. And what a game that just would not – Michigan State could blow out USC. USC could blow out Michigan State. It could go 5 overtimes. Nothing would surprise me in that type of game. That's just who – both of those teams are. And then Marquette taking on Vermont in the 2-15. Vermont's just such a fun team. I mean, the Catamounts, every single year it feels like, in Vermont, they love their basketball. And every single time it comes up to Burlington at the end of the year, Vermont just seems to be the final boss of the American East, basically. And they're just such a fun team. And I always feel bad for it because every year I get tricked into watching that Saturday morning 10 a.m. game. I look at it and go, this Vermont team looks really good. If they get the right seed and the right man, they're a 15 seed. Never mind.
Yeah.
Every single year with Vermont. I think there was one time I remember they were finally like a 13 seed.
Last year I think they were a 14 seed.
Yeah.
They had the chance and they couldn't capitalize.
Yeah, Vermont's always a team that one day, I think about that they're going to get a good matchup as you get a phone call here. Gosh, dang it. Oh, man, you got the phone call interrupting us here, Tyler. But anyway, getting back
forgot to silence my phone. Sorry.
Yeah, forgot to silence your phone. Darn amateur hour here over here. Oh, man. But, it happens to everyone, of course. But looking at it here, I think Marquette wins it. And the Golden Eagles, how about the story of Marquette this year? Shaka Smart building a great team out there. And if Marquette can get to the Sweet 16, be the first time, I believe, since VCU's Miracle Run that Shaka Smart has made it to the second weekend.
Yeah, and that would be pretty crazy in the sense that it's been that long, right? I mean, Shaka Smart at one time was the hot name in coaching in college basketball. That being said, shouldn't have any problem with Catamounts. I think, as fun as they are, just underperformed, throughout the year, and it kind of started last year with not getting done in the tournament. And they, again, like I said, they just draw a horrible seed, man. Marquette is legit. The metrics love them. They're a good team.
They are. And that brings us to the second round here, going all the way back up to the game we do agree on, Purdue taking on FAU, the 1 seed versus the 9 seed. If those two end up battling it out, that should be a fun one, Tyler.
Yeah, and this is where the memes start for me. I told you this is a very interesting region for here.
That's a good word to use there, interesting.
So my contingency with Florida Atlantic is, we go back to scrappiness, their ability to be better on the boards than people realize. I think they attack Zach Edey early. They make him either take charges and try to beat him up physically, or they get the calls to go their way. They're going to try to force the official to make the call. And if Edey gets tagged with 2 or 3 quick fouls, folks, Purdue's not as deep as they were last year. They kind of floated their way to 1 seed, and I think lackluster Big Ten. I'm taking Florida Atlantic for the meme upset.
There you go.
I got it. I think the
there.
scrappiness continues, and they get the dub, move on. They shock the world, beat Purdue.
See, I agree with you on the scrappiness part. I agree with you on the same kind of situation, but I think it goes the opposite. Edey's able to go to the free throw line time after time. FAU's not able to get that to go their way. They have to change their game plan, and Zach Edey has another monster game, and Purdue's able to hold on to dear life to get to the Sweet 16.
That's a very plausible, option there. I don't blame it, but I believe in FAU, man. They're my team that, when you look around, talk about, okay, who can be the Oral Roberts that nobody sees coming? Who can be the, you could bring up so many great teams that just have made runs in the past few years. It seems like I think Florida Atlantic fits the bill. I mean, they're quietly kind of underrated, I think.
And that brings us to another game that, contested matchup here between us. We've got my opinion of Duke versus Tennessee, your opinion of Oral Roberts versus Tennessee. So, Tyler, being the one that doesn't have the matchup on the board here, I'll let you go first. What happens when Oral Roberts plays Tennessee?
Well, first I'll say for the TV, people out there, they would much rather, I promise you, have the Duke-Tennessee matchup for the ratings. But continuing the absolute...
But this is not TV. This is the Tyler Riggs
Continuing
bracket.
the Tyler Riggs fantasy here. I mentioned Tennessee being inconsistent offensively. Oral Roberts is really lights out when they get it going offensively. Defensively, they're a little bit better this year than they were in the past. Still not, anything to write home about. Mid at best, right? But you know what? I think the inconsistency issues rears its head for Tennessee again. I take Oral Roberts to sneak it out, move on, and we get a 9-12 matchup in the stinking Sweet 16, just for all the craziness.
There you go. I like that prediction, and I also agree that Tennessee will lose in the second round, but I've got Duke beating it.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I think Duke finds a way to bounce them, and it sets up a Purdue-Duke Sweet 16. So we'll have to see. Anything's possible, Tyler. That's
why I kept telling myself today.
Yeah, there you go. Everything is possible.
Typing those up.
Yeah, and then Kentucky, Kansas State, back to the bottom of the side, I think we'll agree a bit more on. Kentucky and K-State, 6-3 matchup there. I think K-State wins the Battle of the Cats. I think Kentucky's inconsistency catches up to them there, and Kansas State is able to move on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's the pretty easy breakdown. I don't want to say that Kansas State could kind of sleepwalk to the Sweet 16, but they got a real favorable draw because, this Kentucky team is just not what it's been in the past. Montana State's a good story, but they just don't have the athletes, I think, that can match up with Kansas State. And it seems like for Jerome Tang in his first season, not only is he going to be able to take home the hardware coach year in the Big 12, but he might be able to add that Sweet 16 at least appearance to his mantle. That would be pretty good for Mr. Tanga's first season.
And then the final game to look at here in that second round that we have projected of Marquette and Michigan State. And I'm telling you, don't sleep on Michigan State here. If they do get hot, like we've talked about, how many times have we seen a Tom Izzo team do this before where they just crawl into March and then catch fire late and make a big run? But I don't think this is the year that happens. I think Marquette is too good of a team. They can weather the storm a bit. And I've got Marquette going to play K-State.
Yeah, Marquette just beats people up. They're a physical team. It's something that's kind of been, seemingly since the days of Jimmy Butler, right? That identity. and they stuck with that, and they're actually sneakily pretty well balanced. I like what Marquette brings to the table in a lot of instances, whether it's offensively or defensively. And, yeah, Tom Izzo's squad just not going to have, I think, the horses to go with Marquette this year.
And that puts us at the Sweet 16 matchups of what you have with FAU and Oral Roberts, and then what I have of Purdue and Duke. So we'll see. I mean, anything's possible. But when the Owls play the Golden Eagles, Tyler, what happens?
So, similar strategy gets implemented against Connor Vanover, in my opinion, that got implemented against Zach Edey. FAU, by the grit, the hustle, the determination, they go to the Elite Eight, taking down another miracle run by Oral Roberts. And, give me Florida Atlantic. Lane Kiffin's going to just randomly be at the game sporting FAU equipment just for the fun of it.
I could see him doing that.
Just to revive the Lane Train memes. Yeah, give me all the FAU.
There you go. That could be a fun time. Like I said, anything is possible.
I'm making you look so logical, man.
Insert the meme, but I've got Purdue and Duke being that kind of game you talked about with Purdue. That if there's a team out there built to beat Purdue, it's Memphis. But obviously we don't think Memphis is going to beat FAU.
Yeah.
If there's a second team built to beat Purdue, it's Duke. I think if you can get Filipowski running, try to get him open, try to get some looks. Jeremy Roach has been playing well. Like I said, a Duke team starting to look like that more traditional Blue Devil powerhouse, that machine that beats people up. I think if someone's going to win that matchup against Edey and make Purdue beat you with someone else, Duke is going to be the team to do it. I mean, Coach Schreier, he's still a young guy. Yes, he doesn't have the experience as a coach, but he still has all that experience as a player. You have all that kind of history behind him. You know what Duke does to people, even though they're completely different looking than you would think of a Duke team. Sometimes once you see that logo, that's all you need, and we know how Purdue performs in these type of games. I think Duke stuns Purdue and gets back to the Elite Eight.
Well, and just to add to your point, I think the common theme is, unfortunately for Purdue, as great as Zach Edey's been this year, there's just not much behind him. You know, you get him in foul trouble early. If you could be one of those teams that's aggressive enough to make the ref blow the whistle on them, that puts Purdue in a heck of a bind. And the deeper you get into this tournament, you run into those Dukes, you run into maybe a K-State or Marquette, you're just all of a sudden you're going to be outclassed in terms of the sheer number of athletes on the floor.
And that brings us to the game we agree on. K-State and Marquette, the 2-3 there, a bit more organized. I guess we both agree on our brackets when it comes to that. I think this will be a really fun battle here. I mean, Kansas State, they're a scrappy team. So is Marquette as well. These are two teams that will get after it. But at the end of the day, I think I really do like Marquette to win this one.
Cade, I'm in agreement, man. Marquette, again, just this is going to be their first real test. Same for K-State. You know, when you look at things, and I think Marquette has that sneaky good offense. Like, people don't talk about, we talk about the scrappiness. You think Marquette, you think defense. Mentioned Jimmy Butler, you think that legacy. But they do have the eighth most efficient offense, according to Ken Pom, going into this tournament, which I don't think people will realize that, like, they're legit. They could put it up on you in terms of the score, and I don't think Kansas State is going to have just enough juice to be able to match that.
And that would set up Marquette versus FAU in your bracket, and then Marquette versus Duke in mine. So
I still feel like we'll have the same results here. We'll see.
We probably will. I think I'll go first this time since I've had you go first so many other times. I have Marquette beating Duke here. I think that the Golden Eagles are able to survive and advance there and just keep on going, and we get to see Marquette make the Final Four for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you in my scenario where it's FAU instead of Duke. I think the magic kind of runs out. It gets a little ugly at the end when, you know, FAU just kind of realizes, well, we've took down some giants, but Marquette's that team. And, yeah, Marquette just keeps rolling, you know, and sure enough, find their way, I should say, into the Final Four.
There we go, folks. There's our predictions for the East Regional here in March Madness. Folks, as always, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Tell us if you agree with us. Tell us if you think that we have no clue what we're doing, because that's a possibility. as well.
That's the fun comments. I'll argue with you in the comments. Not in a mean way, but hey, let's debate about it, man. That's the beauty of it.
There you go. But folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody, and have fun building brackets.